Mark Rogers TV on Oregon, Michigan State. Ducks run away from the Spartans in the second half, 46-27. First off, let's separate what Michigan State did on Saturday with the rest of the Big Ten. The Big Ten had an awful day on Saturday. We'll address that possibly in a later video post, in addition to what the Big Ten has done the entire season. Let's separate what Michigan State did. Yes, they lost the game. Yes, they were outclassed in the second half against Florida. But it was not Ohio State losing at home against Virginia Tech, a team that's probably fringe top 25. We will see what the Hokies have later in the season. Or Michigan getting completely throttled, embarrassed, shut down on the road against Notre Dame. Again, possibly a top 15 team. It's difficult to say right now after two games where these teams really rank. But we would consider Notre Dame top 15 or so, something in that range. Michigan shut down 31-0, looked atrocious. Ohio State at home. Yes, they don't have Braxton Miller, but you got to play on. And they could have won that game, but they did not. And they lost to Virginia Tech. Other instances in the Big Ten where teams that should be more competitive and have been much more competitive in the past losing to inferior programs. That's not the case with Michigan State. Yes, they were outclassed, but they played like one of the top 5 teams in America, and they played them on the road, and they showed that most of the time they can stay with them, and we will hear from Michigan State later in the season. I'm going to guarantee that. Total yardage tells us something. 491 for Oregon, 466 for Michigan State. There's just a few elite athletes on the field that make the difference between Oregon and Michigan State. If they play this game in East Lansing, who knows? Maybe Michigan State wins, maybe Oregon still wins. But they played it at Autzen Stadium, and that was a huge advantage for the Ducks. Let's first talk about Michigan State since we started with the Spartans. Again, I still think this is probably one of the 10 best teams in the country. They have very good speed. You can see the difference in some plays with some very elite talent that Oregon has on the edges where Michigan State athletically can't keep up in a few spots. Look at the first half. If you took away all but 2 plays from that Oregon offense, Michigan State shut them down to 2.5 yards per play for the entire first half. But those 2 plays went for 70 and 64 yards and kept Oregon in the game when Michigan State could have possibly not put the game away, but separated themselves by a couple scores at that point at 24-18. Connor Cook is a very good quarterback. Not elite, but a very good quarterback. Will he be elite by season's end? Possibly. Look at the strides that he made last season in going from a pedestrian quarterback who barely beat out Andrew Maxwell to a guy who beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. And say what you will about the Buckeyes in the secondary, an elite defensive line, and he stood in the face of that and threw for 300 yards. And then against a very good Stanford front 7 in the Rose Bowl, again threw for 300 yards. Connor Cook has come miles in 1 year, and he may get even better. But he made a few key mistakes when the pressure was on. The first quarter interception on the first drive of the game, or like the third drive of the game, that led to the Oregon score when he threw the ball down to the 25-yard line. So Michigan State already in field goal range. He gives up the interception return for 39 yards. That sets up Oregon for the first touchdown that made it 8-0. He made a couple other not poor decisions. He just wasn't accurate enough with the football in tight coverage. And these Michigan State receivers, again, for as far as they've come in 1 year and really a year and a half, they're not elite either. So we look at guys like Tony Lippett had an exceptional game, 11 catches for $133 and 1 touchdown, but not one of the best wide receivers in college football. Keith Mumphrey, Aaron Burbridge, and also McCarrett Kings Jr. These guys have been around the program for a long time, and we've seen them progress. These guys were dropping every other pass 2 years ago. They have gotten so much better, but they still dropped a few key passes in this game. They could have kept drives alive. You're going to have a drop or 2 per game, but you can't have 4, 5, or 6 drops, especially on the road against an elite program. And Michigan State could have kept drives alive, and they didn't. They had 3 drives inside the 30-yard line that could have made the difference in this football game. We talked about the Cook pick at the Oregon 25. Jeremy Langford on 4th and 2 at the Oregon 23 couldn't get around the end. Michigan State should not be running to the edge. hardly at all against Oregon. Jeremy Langford, again, nice running back, really good talent, really a guy that can tote the football 25 or 30 times. Did it 24 in this game in like 93-degree heat, but he's not a game changer. He's a guy that can slug it out for 25 times. Michigan State, they could use the one guy, maybe a Dontre Wilson type or and DeAnthony Thomas type, and they're tough to find, I know. Could use that guy that needs the football 8 to 10 to 12 times and can change about 3 plays to turn the game in your favor. They don't have that. Jeremy Langford's not that guy. 1,700 yards, 18 touchdowns last year, but not that guy. And they kept running wide, and that was not going to work. Nick Hill and Shelton and Langford. And then the remarkable play that Ekpre-Olomu, one of the top cornerbacks in college football, made off the deflection when Michigan State still had a chance. They were within 12. They were driving. They were deep in Oregon territory. Ball was deflected in the air, and this is, again, a play that normally after the deflection falls for the incomplete pass, and then they play for another down or possibly a field goal attempt to get within 9. But with an elite athlete, Olomu makes a remarkable interception, finds the football over his head, dives, and catches it off his fingertips before it hits the ground, and Oregon turns the football over and takes it the other way. Shillaquy Calhoun, Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year in 2013, got nothing done in this game. He was quiet, no sacks, no tackles for loss, didn't see him penetrate, get into the backfield, and make big plays, game-changing plays that got Oregon behind the sticks. It was actually Marcus Rush who had 2 sacks and 2.5 tackles for loss for the Spartans in this game. Okay, that's enough on Michigan State. We will hear from the Spartans in the Big Ten schedule. I believe they're the elite team in the Big Ten. That may not be saying much in this season of Big Ten football in 2014. Now we can. I have defended Big Ten football at times. I have been a critic of Big Ten football. I try to call it as fairly as I possibly can and be as unbiased as I possibly can. But the Big Ten did not show us anything on Saturday, when a week ago, despite the Wisconsin collapse in the second half, at least they stood toe-to-toe with LSU. That did not happen. The Big Ten's had other decent wins, but not big wins, and every marquee matchup has gone the other way against the Big Ten. So for right now, people are going to be arguing that the Big Ten is the worst of the Power 5 conferences. I don't know if that's the case. We will see the entire season play out, but it does not look good at this point, and the perception will go against Michigan State by the selection committee, even if they run the table in the Big Ten. Okay. Let's again talk about this Oregon team, because it's just amazing to think when we cut our video post outlining the top 10 running backs in college football, we talked about Thomas Tyner, we talked about Byron Marshall, coming off freshman and sophomore seasons in which they rushed for about 1,000 yards and 10 or 12 touchdowns each. These guys didn't even really get the football that much in this game. Huge matchup against a top 10 opponent. And Tyner runs 13 times for 33. Marshall 5 for 9. They were actually more effective in the pass game. And it was Royce Freeman in his second game, the 10th rated running back coming out of high school, according to ESPNU, who got the football in the clutch situations. 13 carries, 89 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Devin Allen, another guy, when Oregon is just hemorrhaging with speed, they bring on the track star, who's a redshirt freshman. He's only caught 1 pass in his career, and that was against South Dakota last week. And he comes up huge. 3 catches, a $110, and 2 touchdowns. And again, a track star, one of the fastest guys in the country, 16th rated wide receiver, according to Rivals.com. Marcus Mariota might have, in the end, been the difference, because Oregon could not run on Michigan State in the first half. Their 163 yards were almost totaled entirely in the second half, and Mariota kept Oregon in the game. And when the tide changed there midway through the third quarter, after Michigan State kicked the field goal to take a 9-point lead, and Oregon took over and kept drives alive, because Mariota was able to keep plays alive against a Michigan State pass rush that at times was effective, but not effective in completing the play. And Mariota was amazing. 17 of 28, 318 yards, 3 touchdowns. We've only played 2 games out of 12, but if you gave me a ballot right now, he has to be the Heisman Trophy favorite at this point. Again, Michigan State led it 24-18 at the half, 27-18 in the third quarter, but the drive stalled, and the Oregon speed, and we talked about it when we predicted this game, and we took the 13.5 points, predicted Oregon to win, a very good game. This was, but not a classic, because they ran away in the fourth quarter, 46-27, that Oregon, we stated, can change a game in 5 minutes. They can score 3 touchdowns in 6 minutes, and that's pretty much what they did in this one. There's a reason the Ducks are 35-2 at Autzen Stadium in since 2009. 35-2. I believe that other loss was against a very, very good Stanford team a couple years ago. Michigan State, Oregon. Spartan fans, Oregon Duck fans, would love to hear from you what you have to say about your teams. Michigan State, it's not the end of the world, but then again, in this 2014 season, in which your Big Ten colleagues are not holding up their end of the bargain, Michigan State will have a tough road to get to the college football playoff. For Oregon, this is the first of many steps that they need to take against very tough opponents to get through the Pac-12 and get to the college football playoff. Let's talk about it right here on Mark Rogers TV.